Okay, so it's the 2nd of December, 2025. It's the IEMT Q&A. Let's go. I have a client with multiple issues. She describes her problem as I'm in a constant state of anxiety and fearfulness. Where do I start? Now, this was part of a lot more messages and stuff. It was from, I think it was a question on Facebook or something like that. And I said, is it okay to use like a summation to answer on the Q&A? So, if somebody, right, there's different ways of doing this, but if somebody's really riddled with anxiety, as in like they can't do anything, IEMT is not the place to start. Okay, I would start by doing something physical. So when I say something physical, Andy teaches like ball throwing techniques to actually sort of calm yourself down, to calm anxiety down. That or even like breathing exercises or grounding or all these different kinds of things I would probably do first to get the client into a more stable state. Once the client is in a more stable, you could even do hypnosis if you're hypnotically trained, hypnosis trained. Or you can just do sort of different stuff just to know if the client is just like unworkable with. I would try and do that first to try and knock the edges off. Because when you go into IEMT, you know, when you're getting into people into memories and stuff, it's going to make them more emotional and stuff. So I would try and do that first. Okay, then I am. What was the question? I am riddled with dread. I am in a constant state of anxiety and fearfulness. We've got two things to now work on. So a constant state of anxiety. I would then do the three pillars. So draw out the three pillars and explain about anxiety, about feelings from the future, or feelings from the past. And that's where I'll begin to start working. Then fearfulness. Now, fear tends to have a specific target. Okay, what's she fearful of? Okay, and if someone just goes, I'm just fearful of the future, specifically what about the future? Well, I'm not going to earn enough money. Then I'm going to end up homeless. Now we've got something. So we always like trying to make the thing as real world as possible. So people who have anxiety tend to be in a different realm. They tend to be very internal and catastrophizing and really bringing up all these kind of issues. So what I want to really do in the first session, especially, is bring them out this way of thinking, bring them out of this catastrophization, bring them out this overstimulation, teaching them some very simple throwing techniques, and really work out what the problem is. If somebody's in a state of anxiety, they're hypervigilant and everything's a problem, and that makes it really hard to deal with. I was once with somebody who was hypervigilant. They were going through an alcohol detox and stuff, but they found it very hard to walk down the street, like genuinely hard to walk down the street. Cars were going past, they were screeching, they were worried they were going to trip up on tree trunk, not tree roots, and everything like that. So I had to calm them down, really calm them down by doing some ball throwing techniques with them first. So if you don't know where to start by calming somebody down. Even just giving them that space just to calm down in your office or on a Zoom session, just to literally just begin to calm down. Then you can really establish what the problem is. And again, I like to be specific. So if somebody's really fearful, what are they really fearful of? And if they have anxiety, do the three pillars. Hi, Matt. I've seen the IMT teachers use very different speeds for leading the eyes, and I was wondering why that might be. And what speed do you recommend? Thank you. Okay. So when I'm doing it's weird because it's not mirrored, so I'm a bit thrown off it. I tend to go at that kind of speed. Okay, that kind of speed. If you go any slower, people tend to get a bit bored and think about things too much. You know, am I doing this right? if you do it too fast, it can cause the client to get lost. It can cause dizziness, and then it can cause headaches as well. So I'm wanting to avoid that. So essentially, I'm trying to go at a speed which is comfortable for the client. So it's comfortable for the client. And I'll often say, is this speed okay for you? Now, this is one thing which I do, and some of the trainers I haven't. In fact, I was talking to somebody the other day on one of my Q&As, and he said he was taught to do the opposite, which doesn't make sense. If you're trying to get somebody's eyes to a particular point and they're not going there, slow it down. With IEMT, if in doubt, slow things down. Slow things down, okay? So if somebody's eyes are not quite going all the way, all the way, all the way, all the way, that's it. Now down, now all the way up to the top, all the way. So I would slow it right down to make sure you get there. Now the reason is, what I have found from my experience, when you take the client's eyes to the areas that they have trouble getting them to, that's what causes the change, okay? So there's no specific beat to how fast you should do it. Just don't do it fast. Don't do it fast. It's better to do it more slowly at a constant smooth rate than okay, so nice and controlled movements. Make sure it's okay with the client. I don't know how fast other people do it, so I can't compare mine with other people's. Do you still have to provide case studies? Yeah, I got an email the other day going, do you still have to do case studies? Yeah, nothing's changed. You still have to do case studies. Okay, I've got a question here, which I've had to answer that now. Yes, you do need to do case studies. So with case studies, when you do an IEMT training, you're given 3 months to do 2 case studies. So that's working with 2 people, and that's usually doing 2 to 3 sessions with each person. You are able to get an extension with a valid reason up to 6 months. After then, you do need to repeat the course. Now, I do have a 12-month window where if you repeat the course, it's 50% of the price if you don't need the case studies doing. If you do need the case studies doing, then it's a 25% deduction. Okay, so you still get it for cheaper. Now, there's many reasons why, but basically, if you do a course and you're not doing your case studies till a year later, they're going to be bad. You're not going to know what you're doing, okay? So you want to do the case studies as soon as you can after the course. In fact, I even encourage people to start to line up their case studies in advance of doing the course. I had a client last week who said she now dwells on some of the memories because she said she didn't just allow the first time the feeling this way to pop up. She chose huge traumatic events in her life. She told me the emotion had changed from terrified to calm, but wonder if she's just trying to please me. Any thoughts? Right, I don't actually know. I had a client last week who said she now dwells on some of the memories because she said she didn't allow the first time. Well, that's the problem there. If you don't go back to the first time, you're not going to get the full effect of IEMT. She chose huge traumatic events in her life. She told me that the emotions had changed from terrifying to calm, but wondering if she's just trying to please. Sarah, I don't, what is it you're asking me? I don't understand the question, what you're actually asking me. I had a client last week who said she's now dwelling on some of the memories because she said she didn't allow for the first time of the feeling. So this is what people do. They they try to keep it context specific and they try to think of the worst time. I think it's an NLP term that was it the most recent, the first, and the worst, the last, the first, the worst. We're not trying to do that with IoT. Now, sometimes I do work with some specific negative memories, okay, but I'm always trying to get to the integrative pattern quickly and go and get all the imprints. Can IMT make people feel worse? It can do, yeah, it can do. IMT outcome free. It depends on what it, but so does she feel worse? So the question was, can IEMT make people feel worse? So yeah, now the thing is, with IEMT, you're asking people to observe and hold on to a past trauma. Now you're not holding on to it for too long, like you do with IEMT. Um, not with EMDR, sorry, or other kind of stuff. But so IEMT is not care and support. Okay, so this is why you've got to be careful who you work with. But as I said, I think she wasn't doing what I asked. Well, this is a you problem more than a their problem then. If they're not doing what you've asked, you've got to take control of the situation. You've got to take control of the session to make sure that they are going to the first time they can remember feeling this way. So people often go to the worst time, or they'll try and contextualize it, keep within the context. So say that it's something to do with work, they'll try and keep it to do with work. And what you want them to do is to go beyond that and go beyond work. What I would do with this client, Sarah, is when you come to the session, the next session, what's the problem? Just what's the problem now? And start from there. Now, the thing is, if you only did a session with somebody last week and they're dwelling on something, that's fine. Yes, I thought she was at the time, but she's now telling me she wasn't being truthful. Okay, so in the next session, that's something to address. I can actually say, why weren't you being truthful with me? What was it you were avoiding by being truthful? So again, I would always work on what's presented in front of me as well in a session. I've seen other trainers offer repeat training for free. Do you offer this? No. No, I don't. And the reason is that when I do trainings, I usually have what can you do if you can't so remember the first time? All right, let me go down to a sec. So I have seen people who do this. Now I've witnessed some NLP trainings with 90 people on them and one or two trainers. So when I do trainings, I usually have roughly between 8 and 12 people, usually 12 maximum. Okay, so 12 people maximum. I've trained hundreds and hundreds of people. So think about it like this. When you pay your 397 quid or however how much you're paying, do you want to be in a class of 10 people or in a class of 30? I'm going to be able to help you much more if there's a group of 10. Now, I understand why people say you can come back and do it for free. It's a good little marketing thing. I find it impractical. Just now, if you're only doing a few trainings a year, that's probably going to be fine. I do usually 10 or 11 trainings a year. Okay. So if I was to offer that to people who I work with, it would make it completely impractical. And yeah, I keep the numbers low because they always usually sell out. I keep the numbers low so I can actually spend my time with you to make sure you get a really good understanding of IEMT. What do you do if they can't remember the first time? If they can't remember the first time, you ask them, and when is the first time that you can remember somebody else feeling this way? So when's the first time you can remember somebody else feeling this way? So we can take emotions and stuff on either actively or passively, so directly or objectively in that sense. So, and if you can't, and if they can't get to that, then I would do something else at that point if they can't remember at that time. But I could always go like it's the whole sort of Cal banging kind of route, regression. So you have this feeling, you felt it before. Okay, go to that time, go to that time, go to that time. It can be very sort of drawn out doing it that way. Some people can do some hypnosis regression stuff. I don't get into that kind of stuff. But generally, excuse me, when's the first time you can remember feeling this way? I'm not sure. Well, when's the first time somebody else can remember feeling this way? Now, a lot of the time when you're getting somebody to the first time they can remember feeling this way, it's often a long time ago and they're not sure. So make sure you just encourage them to go into the kinesthetic and keep going back. And don't think about it logically. Just think about the kinesthetic and go back to the kinesthetic imprint. Okay, I've got a few more questions. I'm trying to keep these to 20 minutes. It's just better for editing. Can IMT be used on sleep issues? Yeah, sleep is a big area. So it really depends on what you're trying to do with sleep. But generally, there's the fear of going to sleep, the fear of being asleep, and the fear of what happens when you can be asleep. Because it's very, you're very vulnerable. Like I had to actually bonkers dreams last night, and I was like, yeah, crazy. So it's basically when you wake, when when a client comes to you, explore what the problem is around sleep. Now you've got to also look at what we call sleep hygiene, and that is basically the quality of the bed, the brightness, like all the darkness in the room, how comfortable the bed is, how quiet the room is, all these different kinds of things. Also, things like caffeine consumption, are they using phones at night? So, most sleep issues I have found kind of tend to resolve if you sort of look at those things as opposed to therapy. However, if you are then looking at that, say, okay, so in this dream or in these dreams that you're having, what's the emotion that comes up? How strong, how familiar? Or what's the scenario that keeps coming up? Because they tend to have quite reoccurring themes. Also, when you think about going to sleep, what emotions come up? You've now got stuff to work with. What is the difference between the two eye movements? The two eye movements that we do are obviously the straight lines. I'm not really doing these very well today. Or obviously the curvy lines. So what's the difference between the two? Well, the straight lines tend to work better on memory. So when you have a direct memory or an imprint, that tends to work better. The curvy lines tend to work better with identity-based stuff. I'm not entirely sure why, and I don't think it's ever really been fully explained. I think it's just from doing it so many times, this is just what we have found to work the best. If you did it the wrong way around, would it work? It would, but doing it this way tends to work the best. How can I stop my clients from speaking too much and over-explaining? Frame control. You need to control the interaction from the very beginning. So think of it like this. When you take on a new client, what was that onboarding process? How many emails did they send you? If somebody sends you loads of emails asking questions, your marketing has failed, you haven't had frame control, and they are probably going to be harder to work with. If somebody comes to you and says, I've seen your stuff, I think you can help me, can we book a consultation? They tend to be really good to work with. I've been watching you for 2 years. I want to work with you. In the consultation, you explain how you're going to help them by going through their form, and you explain in the session, this isn't talk therapy. So when I'm asking you to give me an answer, I'm just going to keep asking you the same questions, and I'm going to ask you to stop talking a lot of the time. Now, if that's going to be too triggering for you, IEMT is not the path for you. So if you're okay with that, now the thing is, if the session starts and if you ask them a question, if they speak too much, you're conditioning this client. So the more you let them speak, the harder it is to get them to stop. So you've got to initialize this straight away. So when you think about this memory now, what's it like? Well, the thing is, hold it. When you think about this memory, what's it like? Is it a picture or is it a movie? You need to jump on this right from the beginning. And I do this through my marketing, really, and then through the consultation. Now, if somebody keeps sending me, oh, can I just ask you a few questions? Yep. So if you're booking a consultation, fill out this form and then book oh, that's really good. Can I ask some questions first? No. And some people are like, well, that's really rude. Yeah. And the thing is, I know that in the information pack and stuff, those questions are going to be answered. But what the client does, the client wants my attention instead, and that's not what they're paying for. They're paying for my services. They're paying for IEMT. They're not paying for my attention. Any last questions? If I'm going to draw this to a close, we've got the interview with Mandy. God, who are these people? Got an interview with Mandy on Thursday about working with 500 plus clients, which is 3,000 hours of IEMT, which is going to be good. All right then, guys. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on Thursday.